Let's take a look at the line in the AFC East. Let's take a look at first of the divisional odds, and no surprise here, the Buffalo Bills are a heavy favorite to win the AFC East. You know, you go over to the DraftKings Sportsbook, and you'll see just how big of an edge they have on the rest of the division. The Bills at minus 280, the Patriots plus 475, the Dolphins plus 750, and the Jets plus 1800 sitting over in the corner there. Kelley, let's talk. First of all, the Bills are a prohibitive favorite. Is there any value in finding a price and betting them?
You know what? A couple things for regular listeners of a numbers game. I might get a little blowback here, but I do think that division price, if you are building some NFL, futures parlays or something like that, that is an attractive piece to throw into there for me. This is... I don't see the Bills losing this division. I'm not running to lay minus 280, but with just everything that can happen during the course of an NFL season, will I be looking to get in on it if there is a possible dip? If the Patriots or Dolphins start off hot and maybe the Bills, lose that Ravens game, lose one more game early on, I can get a little bit better the number than this. Yeah, I'll be in on it. I did bet them to have the most regular season wins in the NFL, and will also be betting them for the AFC 1 seed. I just think when you're looking at this division, I think they are going to absolutely carve through. And I really think that their schedule, with how easy it is, really sets up well for them to be able to go capture that number 1 seed in the AFC. So very high on this Bills team that, look, added some pieces, lost some pieces, right? You can definitely make a case that, Von Miller, Kaiir Elam, Mac Hollins, some of these guys that did leave, not exactly ideal for this Bills team. You bring in Josh Palmer, though I'm high on Joey Bosa coming in. I think there are some additions that kind of make this a wash in the end for the Bills. And all I see is one of the best quarterbacks, I won't say the best, but one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL go out there year in and year out. And the offense just every year seems to become even more simplified with what they're trying to do with Josh Allen. And it's just, he's just not getting hurt. We all said when he was coming into his career, and we saw how often he was running the ball, this guy's going to get hurt at some point. He's played 12 plus games every season that he's suited up. It's just he's out there every single week because he's bigger than everybody trying to tackle him. And I think it's really just that simple sometimes. So I'm a big believer in this Bills team this year. I really do think this is the year that they get over the hump, and we are talking about them in a Super Bowl, but love them in this division and really think they are by far the rightful favorite here.
And Nick, they invested a lot of draft capital as well on that. Nick, I do want to talk to you about the New England Patriots. You and I have a lot of discussions about the Pats, especially off air, because our producer Michael Cohen on Prop Points is a huge, massive Pats fan. Big overhaul this offseason there. Lots of free agent money invested. Their win total has jumped up quite a bit. If you go look over at them at the at any of the sports books there, and now you'll see that they've jumped up to usually around 7.5 is where I'm seeing them now. Are you buying the Pats, their offseason, and all the optimism that surrounds this team?
Yeah, shout out to our guy, Michael Cohen, who I believe has the Patriots going 17-0 this year. We have to kind of slowly talk him out of that. Look, Patriots plus 475 to win the division. I'm not really interested in that. I'm going to need longer odds. I mean, keep in mind, Buffalo's almost minus 300 for a reason. They won this division by 5 games last season. It was basically wrapped up by the middle of the year. And certainly you would expect the Patriots to make a leap this season. I think bringing in Mike Vrabel to me is the key piece beyond any development for Drake May, beyond anything that they did in the draft or in free agency. But it's good to see the Patriots at least hitting the gas, going back into contention mode, right? I think after this team, basically dominated the NFL for a good 2 decades, it's been a weird 2-3 years wandering in the wilderness where this Patriots team is like scuffling to get to 4 or 5 wins. I think they'll be right around that 7 to 9 win mark. I'm a little bit lower, I think, than market on the New England Patriots. These teams that spend a ton in free agency, try to plug all their holes. I think oftentimes it looks really good on paper, doesn't necessarily look great in practice. You're asking guys who maybe played smaller roles on a good team to then come in and kind of be the man for you. And oftentimes that doesn't work out, speaking from experience as a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. So I'm a little bit tepid on New England. I would pencil them in as the second best team in this division, but again, there's still a huge gap for me. Buffalo could win 13, 14, 15 games. I think New England will be right in that 7 to 9 range. like I said. I will say, guys, I think I'm a little bit higher on the New York Jets than you guys are. Now, would I take the Jets to finish first or second in the division? Absolutely not. They're 18-1 to win the division for a reason. But I think there's a path to the Jets finishing third in the AFC East. You can get that at plus 210 right now. This Pats team could certainly falter. The Dolphins, to me, as we talked about earlier, they could collapse again if Tua misses any time. We saw what that offense looked like last year. And you look at Miami right now, I don't feel great about this roster. You have some names on offense, but it's a team that I think is really, really top heavy. If Tyreek Hill, if Jalen Waddle miss any time, there's not really a fallback option. All due respect to Darren Waller, he's not moving the needle for me if he even makes this team out of camp. And, great that they get Minka Fitzpatrick back, one of the best safeties in football, but you plugged a hole at safety, but now you've opened up an even bigger hole to me at cornerback.
Okay, quick thoughts from me because Jeff, want to get your thoughts on this division. Nick, I think there's crazier things that could happen in this year in the NFL than the Jets finishing second in this division. I'm right there with you on these other two teams. I think we're getting a little too excited about the Patriots. I like Drake May. I think he's going to be great going forward. I think we're making quite a leap in expectations from this team. And the Dolphins, I'm on they're falling to one of a couple teams for me that, hey, they could far out exceed my expectations. I actually wouldn't be that shocked. I think everybody's down on them. I think there's a least small glimmer of hope that some of this comes together on the offense and they go back to being an offensive juggernaut. But there is definitely a situation that could play out there where they are a complete dumpster fire this season. And maybe that's enough for the Jets to just kind of squeak into that second place spot. So I don't think that's the craziest thing that we're going to see happen this season of the NFL.
Yeah, I think we're actually kind of in lockstep in a way, because I am probably fading the Dolphins more. The problem is, and we were talking earlier, sometimes you wait on making a bet. Sometimes you wait on doing your fantasy football draft. Sometimes you got to act early. I was down on the Dolphins well before the trade, before they traded away, Jonnu Smith, before they, traded away Jalen Ramsey. We always knew that Ramsey was going to go. It's just a question of where. It used to be a solid 8.5 where you're getting a decent price on it. Now the only place where you can find 8.5 wins and you're going to have to pay like at least minus 160 to bet the under on that 8.5. Now it's 7.5 at most places there. You get a decent price on that. And I still might go that route, because I really do think this is a possibility. This is a team that could just bottom out. I mean, they could exceed as well. I because of McDaniel, because of Tua. If Tyreek is what he was before, I get it. But he was 39th in yards after catch last year. This is a stat brought up by Jim Coventry, our colleague over at RotoWire. He was not good after catch after contact last season. I think that's something you have to wonder. Is he kind of hitting that cliff? If he's not that scary guy, then what do the Dolphins really have? They took away their number 2 option. Their number 2 option was not Jalen Waddle last year. It was Jonnu Smith. Let's not, especially towards the second half of the season. Devon Achan's going to get so much work. He's got to stay healthy. Their left tackle, Teron Armstead, retired. You look at that defensive depth chart there, it's a disaster. I know they added Minka in that trade, and he'll be fine as a safety, but those corners are just terrible. Guys, they are really relying on players coming back to health. Players that, we didn't get a whole lot out of. They're counting on that pass rush to solve all ills. They're counting on, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips coming back to full strength, Chop Robinson doing what he did over the second half last year, and covering up the fact that secondary is maybe one of the worst secondaries in football. So that's a team I'm heavily fading. I think that even still at 7.5, I think I'd probably fade. I think there's a real collapse risk. It could be one of those teams where the coach is on the hot seat, and he's going to be someone that, the team kind of quits on that note there. I think this is a real disaster possibilities here.
Jets, I think we wanted to circle back on because maybe Nick and I said some pretty unheard of things about the New York Jets and how they could finish this year. Jeff, start with you and just what you think about this Jets team this year.
The dysfunction has been removed. At least some of it has. I mean, you can't remove the owner, unfortunately. And so that's one thing you can't take away. But I think there is reason for optimism. You guys made the case for that there, and I think I'm on board with that. Fantasy-wise, Garrett Wilson's a player I've been targeting frequently in my drafts. A year ago, you were playing end of the first round, beginning of the second round. Imagine what he could do with the real quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be great. Sunshine and rainbows. You know what? It wasn't great, and there were frustrating times. And yet, despite this, every single year of his career, he's been over 1,000 yards. He's worked with Justin Fields. Remember, they were teammates at Ohio State. I know there's a potential contract rumbling with him. Keep in mind they exercised his 5th-year option. He didn't say he was going to use a holdout as a tactic or anything of that nature, but just watch for that. But I think the usage is going to be through the roof because you look at the depth chart there. Josh Reynolds, Allen Lazard, Malachi Corley. Stop me if you hear someone that's going to take away targets from Garrett Wilson. I like him a lot at that 2-3 turn in 12-team drafts. I think you're getting him frequently there. Looking at the roster as a whole, I think they improved their offensive line quite a bit. And that's going to help, ease Justin Fields in here. So I think there's reason for optimism, fantasy, and in real life.
Nick, what about you?
Yeah, I hesitate to say that I'm like in on the New York Jets. That's not something that I want clipped and then played back, week 8 when they're like 1-6. But
freezing cold takes.
I'm more optimistic. Yeah, I'm more optimistic on this team, I think, excuse me, certainly than the market is. Now, the win total is complicated. If you like the over 5.5, which I do, you're laying minus 160. And if you like this team to, all of a sudden get to 7 wins, the number's more appealing, but that seems, a little bit ambitious for me. So again, the way I'm playing this is the Jets to finish 3rd in that division. You're getting that at plus 210. I don't know if I'm willing to hop on with Kelley and go all the way up to 2nd in the division, but I think one of the Patriots or the Dolphins is going to falter. The question is, which of those teams will it be? To me, it's more likely that it's Miami, but you could sell me on either of those. I think what we forget about with the Jets is how much talent is still on this defense. Now, it was a defense that was banged up. It was a defense that underachieved. They had, contract issues with some key players last season, but you now have a defensive-minded head coach in the building in Aaron Glenn. And like you said, Jeff, you're removing the Aaron Rodgers cloud from this team. Justin Fields, at this point in his career, he's joining his 3rd team in the last 4 seasons. So I understand that there is, some hesitancy to approach him with optimism, but look, if you want to spin this from a fantasy angle, I have Justin Fields as one of my top 10 fantasy quarterbacks this season. And he's somebody you can routinely get after pick 100 in a lot of fantasy drafts. So if you're not shopping in that range where you're paying up for a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or a Jaden Daniels, I'm not really interested in taking a quarterback in like that pick 60 to 80 range. That's where you have to pop somebody like Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix. I think there's a lot of upside with Justin Fields. Didn't even feel like he played all that well in his 6 starts with the Steelers to begin last season. He was still the 6th ranked fantasy quarterback in that span. And I think he actually, for the first time in a while, has some semblance of job security with the New York Jets. I mean, the backup right now is Tyrod Taylor, who, yes, is capable, but we know who he is at this point, right? There's not another quarterback on this roster who, you want to get a look at, or, this Russell Wilson type who you feel like can shepherd you to the postseason. I think the Jets finally kind of realize where they are, where they stand in the AFC. And I think they want to give Justin Fields a chance to really take this offense by the reins and run with it. I'm with you on Garrett Wilson as well, Jeff. Part of it is I just love the player. I think he was underutilized last season, ended up being marginalized once Devontae Adams came in. Still had a much better year, I think, than his reputation last season would imply. And like you said, there is just nothing else in that wide receiver core right now for the New York Jets. So obviously it's a team with some holes, but I don't think the Jets are that far behind the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins as those division odds would imply.
For sure. And we were just talking with Adam Burke earlier about finding alt win total lines. And I was just perusing at the DraftKings Sportsbook. If you don't like that minus 160 price at over 5.5 wins on the Jets, but you really do believe that there's capability of them finishing second in the division, at least winning 7 or 8 games, over 6.5, you get a plus 120 price. Over 7.5, plus 200. So if you really want to kind of have a sprinkle on a couple of those lines, I think that might be a way to go.
Yeah, I think that is a great call, Jeff. I think these are the different ways that you can analyze different markets out there and find the best way to get in on a team. Nick, I'm with you. I'm not going to sit here and rush to make a bet that they're finished second. But I think the overall takeaway from this conversation is I'm not sure, and it sounds like we're not sure that the Patriots are quite there yet in a very, very stacked AFC just overall. And Dolphins, maybe I have a little bit more belief in than you two, but I think it's either very high-end outcome or very, very low-end outcome. So Jets, no surprise here, I think, if they do something.